What factors have contributed to the escalation of Israeli aggression in the West Bank in 2024?
Greetings to you and your viewers, and we hope that the coming year will be a year that is more positive than this one, which has been characterized by genocide, apartheid, starvation to the Palestinian people. Of course, it's been a year full of bloodshed, and we hope that this doesn't get perpetuated into the new year. In fact, what is governing the Israeli state right now is the right-wing extremist sects which want to liquidate the Palestinian cause altogether and to perpetuate apartheid and genocide practices against the Palestinian people, and want to demolish the future of the Palestinian people in order to establish the greater Israel, as they call it. In fact, the other thing regarding the international community deficit in the face of the massacres taking place in Palestine over the course of 15 consecutive months of genocide right now, regarding that, I would say that because of the international community's lapse and deficit relative to countering these atrocities, the Israeli state right now feels that it can achieve impunity and that it is beyond punishment and even condemnation. In fact, the mindset that governs the Israeli state is a bloodshed mindset and a warring set. In fact, as well, the international community with its different organizations, the fact that it had kept on evading and trying, it had kept on disregarding these atrocities, this is something that actually proves how weak the international community is when it comes to establishing or supporting the Palestinian cause and helping in establishing the Palestinian independent state along the borders of 1967, which is something that is actually guaranteed and mentioned elaboratively in international instruments. The international community, I would say, cannot operationalize its own instruments, the instruments that it had ratified in the first place.
So, how have the Israeli occupation military operations in the West Bank actually affected the daily lives of the Palestinians?
In fact, in the Gaza Strip, as you are seeing on screens moment by moment, the Gaza Strip is actually turning into an inhabitable region. In fact, 85% of the Strip has been demolished altogether, and the population there don't have access to shelter, to food, to basic services, and so the Gaza Strip is 100% inhabitable. In fact, in the West Bank, the situation is kind of different, but not vastly different, though, because there is a siege happening there and a complete ripping of the resources of the Palestinian people in the West Bank. Of course, all the resources of the Palestinian people are looted by the Israeli occupation forces. And in fact, 2 years ago, when Smotrich, in fact, announced the plan of ending the conflict with us, or the termination plan. In fact, after he launched this statement, he, with his government, of course, kept on intensifying arrests for thousands of Palestinians operations and kept on even intensifying the siege and the barricade in the Palestinian territories in order to operationalize what they called the termination plan or the Hasma plan. In fact, as well, Israel is right now imposing offensives and aggressions on everything Palestinian. Infrastructure, different areas, different facilities. And the Palestinian people, of course, has lived a year that is the most difficult in the history of the Palestinian cause. And we recognize very well that in Palestine we are living our most difficult era in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank alike.
So all these violations carried out by the Israeli occupation army is even compounded by the settler activities and violence. What is the impact of settler violence on the Palestinian population in the region?
In fact, the Minister of the Internal Security or Homeland Security in Israel has armed tens of thousands of settlers in the West Bank in different ways. He provided them with heavy weaponry and light weaponry, and he called these armed population or disarmed population the National Army. He even gave them a name. As well, right now, the settlers of Israel are actually armed, and they keep on using their arms against the Palestinian people. Right now, they are assaulting the Palestinian population, and they enjoy a legal coverage for that as well by their own government. These settlers have been assaulting Palestinian farmers and have burned tens of olive trees and cultivated lands and fields. The settlers have as well burnt the Palestinian people alive in their households as they were sleeping. This happened over and over again. They as well keep on attacking vehicles of Palestinians with their different kinds of arms. In fact, as well, the Israeli settlers have been torturing the Palestinian people in different ways, and simultaneously they are enjoying legal coverage. And for that matter, of course, they get impunity and they run away with what they do. In fact, many Palestinian people own cultivated lands that have olive trees which got burnt down. And once more, the Israeli settlers keep on perpetuating these acts because, of course, they get impunity.
Mr. Abdel Fattah, how has the Israeli government justified its actions in the West Bank despite the rising death toll and arrests?
In fact, the Israeli government doesn't need no justification. The Israeli project is now led by right-wing extremists. This project, as I had said, predicates upon what they called the plan of termination. And the Zionist Jewish leaders perceive this project as a roadmap. This roadmap has three main pillars, in fact, and the leaders said that the Palestinian people is before three options: either to subdue, to get displaced, or to die. And in fact, the Israeli right-wing extremists want once more to demolish all things Palestinian and to obliterate the Palestinian legacy and population altogether. And for that matter, the Jewish right-wing leaders abide by the Talmud extremist teachings in order to apply their annexation, their West Bank annexation projects, and to displace the population of Palestine from different territories. And for that matter as well, the Israeli government perpetuates its arbitrary practices and genocidal practices against the Palestinian people. In fact, the Palestinian people is not just right now facing military aggression, but it is facing and trying to counter the Israelis trying to forcibly displace this population and obliterate its legacy altogether. In fact, I would like here to commend the Egyptian state for its continuous pursuits to counter the expansion Israeli project. And I'm talking about the Egyptian authorities when they announced that they are 100% against displacing the Palestinian people into Sinai and are against terminating and liquidating the Palestinian cause by doing so. In fact, the Israelis, of course, tried to do that, and they think that they have American coverage, and they think that the president-elect Donald Trump, when he comes to office, he is going to help them operationalize this expansion project of theirs. In fact, the Netanyahu government perceives that it is in a state of power and that they can terminate and liquidate the conflict in their own favor. And so the Palestinian people has no options right now but to stay resilient and to consolidate their relations with Arab states in order to advance efforts and to get the international community to abide by international legitimacy. And of course, once more back to your question, the Israeli government does not need any justification for the aggression it is continuing to practice against the Palestinian people.
Sir, what are the economic consequences of Israeli policies in the West Bank, particularly in terms of the loss of population capacity and job cuts?
In fact, all these matters, of course, apply tremendous pressure on the Palestinian people economically. On the level of unemployment, there are tens of thousands of laborers that got redundant and have lost their job and cannot now make a decent living or any kind of living. And even the laborers and the personnel of the governmental authorities in Palestine right now do not receive their salaries regularly because the revenues because the Israeli government receives the taxes on behalf of the national Palestinian authorities. And of course, during this process, they loot the revenues and the taxes and resources of the Palestinian people. Sometimes they actually give some of the revenues to the Palestinian government, and sometimes they do not. And they refrain from doing that under the pretext that they just want to protect themselves, or maybe or under the pretext that the government is subsidizing Hamas or got demolished altogether. And the Palestinian people are actually barely able to get by in life because of the arbitrary practices of the Israeli government and the economic siege imposed on the Palestinian people in the West Bank. This is an Israeli scheme that is unfolding on the ground in order to starve and punish the Palestinian people, and to punish, of course, the Palestinian people for what happened in the 7th of October.
Of course. Sir, how do you view the role of international bodies in terms of Israeli actions in the West Bank in 2024?
In fact, the international community should actually incur this responsibility. But as we see, the international bodies and humanitarian bodies are trying to get the humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. But the Israeli government keeps on blocking their pathways and keeps on preventing the humanitarian aid from entering the in order to, or they keep on blocking the pathway and preventing the humanitarian aid from entering into the Gaza Strip. In fact, I would like here to commend the Egyptian state for what they have done after Israel has colonized and demolished the Rafah crossing from the Palestinian side. I would like, of course, to commend what they did when they decided to get the humanitarian aid through air landing into the Strip directly. Of course, that was something positive, but still, what is happening right now in Palestine is a major catastrophe, and Israel keeps on looting even the humanitarian aid and the funds mobilized to help the population there. This is, I would say, the biggest robbery case in the world right now. And the Palestinian people are suffering beyond measure, and the international community cannot really, or is not really incurring its responsibility to help the Palestinian people. And so I would like to call on the international organizations, the humanitarian organizations, the bodies, to stand in the face of this Israeli arbitrariness and to impose sanctions on the Israeli state because it keeps on violating international charters and instruments, and it keeps on starving the Palestinian people. And so we have to ask ourselves the question, why don't the international community organizations impose control over Israel and impose sanctions over Israel? In fact, this arbitrary support of the Israeli state is something that has to be stopped. Israel keeps on receiving support from a lot of West states, including, of course, the United States, to further escalate its aggressions, and we call on the Arab states as well to consolidate their stance and to respond to the initiative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in order for Arab states to establish an international coalition backing up the resolution of establishing a Palestinian independent state along the borders of 1967. This work requires a lot of effort, of course, and we in Palestine are working diligently to, in fact, to call on the international community to incur its responsibilities. But unfortunately, the Israeli occupation forces keep on dominating the scene and keep on perpetuating their genocidal and apartheid practices. In fact, Netanyahu does not really represent some kind of jeopardy to the Palestinian people alone, but to the entire administration of justice and to the international justice system and all peoples of the world, because he keeps on violating the provisions of international instruments And this is something that can jeopardize the peace and security atmosphere of the entire world.
Yes. So what role does the withholding of Palestinian funds by Israel actually play in exacerbating the situation, making things worse for the Palestinians?
In fact, as I told you, yes, of course, the personnel and employees of the of the Palestinian national authorities do not receive their salaries in full. They receive meager salaries that can only sustain them over the first 10 months or less of their months. And in fact, the Palestinian employee is in a dire situation because they do not receive their salaries in full. And there are laborers, foreign laborers as well, that were working inside the Palestinian territories, and they as well have left Palestine, or some of them as well, some of the employers as well have been forced actually to release a lot of the laborers and to get a lot of their workforce redundant because of the extreme economic conditions that is imposed on them. In fact, the Palestinian national authorities tries every month to disperse the salaries of the employees in the midst of the great budget deficit that it is suffering from. And of course, all the service facilities in Palestine, for them to be operating well, they need constant subsidy from the government, which is not really available. And so we can say that the economic stature of Palestine is beyond dire. And we, of course, need all our friends and allies, friendly states and allies from the international community to get Israel to give us our own funds and our own resources. In fact, in a meeting at the League of Arab States a few years back, there was, or this issue was stirred, and the Arab states tried to help the Palestinian people by consolidating their efforts in order to cater for the budget deficit happening in Palestine because of the Israelis looting the Palestinian people's resources. And of course, once more, as you have said, the economic stature of the Palestinian state is beyond dire, and I have just explained to you how the economic stature of Palestine has been on the decrease because of the Israelis looting our resources.
Well, that was Mr. Abdel Fattah Doula, the spokesperson for Fatah movement. Thank you very much for your valuable insights.